President Ramaphosa urges the GNU to restore public trust and protect South Africa's democracy, warning that failure could shatter the nation's democratic future. In a powerful message that blends urgency with cautious optimism, President Cyril Ramaphosa has issued a clarion call for the Government of National Unity, GNU, to rise above partisan squabbles and internal wrangling, and instead focus on safeguarding something far more fragile and precious, the faith of South Africans in democracy itself. As the political winds shift and alliances form in what is arguably the most unpredictable chapter of South Africa's democratic journey since 1994, Ramaphosa's tone was clear: this is not the time for complacency, and certainly not the time for self-interest. This is the moment to remind every citizen, especially those disillusioned by broken promises and growing inequality, that democracy still works, but only if those entrusted with it are prepared to work for it. Addressing the media and stakeholders in an unusually impassioned speech, Ramaphosa underscored that the GNU cannot merely be a coalition of convenience cobbled together to serve political expediency. Rather, it must become a force of restoration, a collaborative engine that demonstrates the value of consensus, compromise, and a renewed moral contract between government and the people. This, he asserted, is the lifeline of any democracy worth defending. And in a nation where poverty remains dangerously high, youth unemployment has become a ticking time bomb, and public trust in state institutions is increasingly brittle, Ramaphosa's insistence that the GNU must ensure South Africans retain their faith in democracy sounded less like a slogan and more like a national imperative. At the heart of this message lies an acknowledgement of a sobering reality: South Africans are growing weary. The excitement of the 1994 miracle has long faded into frustration with stalled reforms, broken services, rampant corruption, and a political elite often more consumed with factional power battles than with the plight of the average citizen. In recent years, this disillusionment has turned dangerous, manifesting in violent protests, record low voter turnout, and a surge in populist rhetoric. Ramaphosa's words sought to cut through the noise and remind South Africans that their voices still matter, and that democracy, though messy and imperfect, remains the most viable path forward. He reminded his audience that the essence of democracy is not just captured during elections, but in how power is exercised afterward. The GNU, he stressed, is not simply a numerical arrangement of seats in parliament, but a reflection of the will of the people and the necessity of governing in the public interest, not political interest. He warned that any government failing to recognize this could find itself quickly alienated from the very citizens it claims to serve. And in a veiled warning seemingly directed at both allies and opponents, he added that those who seek to use the GNU as a tool to push narrow agendas or sabotage its goals would not only destabilize the government, but also shake the foundations of democracy itself. While Ramaphosa's remarks aimed to project confidence, they also betrayed an acute awareness of the fragility of the moment. The GNU experiment is uncharted territory, with former rivals forced into proximity and compelled to find common ground on national priorities like economic reform, anti-corruption drives, energy security, healthcare, education, and crime. It is a political environment ripe for friction and failure. But it also holds within it the promise of a new kind of politics, one that Ramaphosa described as inclusive, transparent, and deeply rooted in the will of the people. He did not shy away from the scale of the challenge. Building and sustaining faith in democracy in an era of digital disinformation, global economic shocks, and domestic turbulence will not be easy. But, he argued, it is precisely for this reason that the GNU must work harder, act faster, and listen better. He pointed to the need for immediate reforms in how government communicates with the public, urging transparency, responsiveness, and accountability as non-negotiable pillars. South Africans, he said, must feel they are not just spectators, but active participants whose lived experiences shape policy. Part of rebuilding this trust, Ramaphosa continued, involves restoring the integrity of public institutions. From municipalities to the judiciary, from state-owned enterprises to law enforcement, the GNU must treat good governance not as a buzzword but as a binding commitment. He emphasized that the era of impunity must end, and that corruption, no matter where it resides, must be confronted with urgency and courage. Without this, he warned, citizens will continue to view democracy as a rigged game where the powerful play by different rules. Ramaphosa also touched on the vital role of young people in revitalizing democracy. He acknowledged their anger and disillusionment but called on them not to disengage, but to re-engage, to organize, mobilize, and demand better from those in power. Our democracy depends not only on how we govern, he said, but on how we encourage the next generation to believe that they too can lead, shape, and protect this nation. Notably, the president resisted the temptation to cast the GNU as a panacea. Instead, he framed it as an opportunity, a moment of reckoning that could either reinvigorate the democratic spirit or deepen fault lines. The difference, he said, would come down to leadership, sincerity, and an unshakable commitment to serving the people first. If we fail now, he said solemnly, we will not only betray those who elected us, we will betray the idea of democracy itself. His remarks come at a time when many observers, both domestically and abroad, are watching South Africa with cautious eyes. The success or failure of the GNU will be seen as a broader test case for democratic resilience in the global South. Can a country with deep divisions and a painful past forge a new path through cooperation and shared governance? Can democratic institutions evolve fast enough to meet the challenges of the 21st century? And most importantly, can ordinary citizens still believe that democracy will deliver? Ramaphosa's appeal was not just a political message, but a deeply human one. He spoke of the hopes of parents wanting a better future for their children, the fears of the unemployed, the frustrations of those living in crime-ridden communities, and the quiet resilience of those who continue to believe, against all odds, that South Africa's best days are still ahead. It was a reminder that democracy is not just about laws, structures, or parties. It is about people, their dignity, their voice, their future. As the government of national unity takes shape and begins its work, the eyes of the nation will be watching. Not just to see what policies are enacted or which leaders rise to prominence, but to see whether the promise of democracy can still be kept. Ramaphosa has thrown down the gauntlet, not just to his cabinet colleagues, but to every South African. The time for division is over. The time for delivery is now. For those who believe in the power of democracy, in the possibility of progress, and in the resilience of the South African spirit, this is a defining moment. The work will be hard, the road uncertain, but the destination is clear, a democracy that works, a government that listens, and a people who believe once more.